We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Tuesday. We're one day into the week, and it's already getting a little bit crazy. A lot of shit to talk about. And there's so much stuff to talk about. I'm thankful that I have a guest on the program today, and that guest happens to be Eric. He's a friend from Iowa. Eric, welcome, and thanks for lending a hand today.
Well, no problem. Glad to be back. Glad our schedules worked out where we could make it happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm trying to work. I've got somebody from Sweden who wants to be on. We're trying to work those hours out, which should be interesting, and a couple of others uh, that should be interesting too. So we've got a lot of people wanting to come on the show, and I think that's fabulous. Anytime I can get people on the show, especially if they're smarter than me, as in your case or Ed's case or Old Soul's case or any of the rest, it's only a positive thing for the show. I was I was just watching the documentary about Wendy Williams, and that sad story how she has dementia, and she's kind of there and kind of not there, and she's kind of hard to deal with. I imagine myself in 10 to 15 years being in the same mode, me getting up every day doing a podcast, but not actually doing a podcast, just going through the motions. It you start thinking about those things as you get older. That reality comes closer, and if I ever get to that point, I want you guys to say, Mike, just all right, that's enough. That's enough. We don't need to keep listening to your shit now. You're getting repetitive. I wanted to talk about the interesting story. I mean, I think it's a very important story, and it wasn't getting as much press yesterday as I thought it would. It's maybe one of those things that will pick up steam here today and tomorrow. But this was the story coming in about the classified documents case. We know what's going on down in Florida. We've got Aileen Cannon, the judge, kind of slow walking that. We're not sure how that's going to go. But there's somebody in that case, in that trial, upcoming trial, goes by the title of Witness Five. I think his name is Bradley or something. Doesn't really matter. But Witness Five, and he told an interesting story today, don't you think?
Yeah, I heard bits and pieces of it. Sounds like he said that there were some of the documents he knew of personally, or some of the boxes or something made their way to New Jersey. And oh, good Lord, if that's true,
Oh
that
yeah,
just brings all more the, we were talking about it back when he was charged initially. Are they going to charge him in New Jersey? Because of the one audio clip we heard about of Donald Trump rustling the papers around and showing people documents at Bedminster. Well, now
right.
if there's any sort of corroborating evidence that he had documents up there, that could lead to a whole separate set of charges. And who needs Aileen Cannon?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I was thinking of. This Witness Five, the story he tells is this: that in June of 2022, um, Donald Trump's lawyers were meeting with the FBI regarding the upcoming search of Mara Lago. On that same day, this witness number five and Donald Trump's body man, as they call him, Walt Nauta, um, took some luggage and some boxes to Donald Trump's plane to be brought to New Jersey, Bedminster specifically. Um, and this witness five said at the time he didn't really give it a second thought, but now that he's seen these classified documents in Mar-a-Lago, he's seen that talked about. He realized that those boxes that were part of this, and he said there were like 13 or 14 of them, they were the white banker's boxes. So he can only presume that they're classified documents. If nothing else, they're certainly suspicious. But he says he helped them load them onto the plane and then off to Bedminster. That's uh, that's some pretty suspicious shit if that's actually what happened.
Oh, sounds very suspicious. And I know there was, like I said, the report out or the audio clip of him rustling some papers and showing a classified map. at Bedminster or something like that. And I know there's been speculation. I know it's a conspiracy theory, but did he bury classified documents with his ex-wife? Well,
Or
now if we know documents went up there, is it possible? I mean, I could see Dottie being that stupid. Well, if I put them in her grave, they won't find them. I won't be able to do anything with them, but at least
right,
they won't find me with them.
right, right. Yeah, it's a weird situation. The thing I don't understand is if they have a witness that tells this story, we just found out about it, but Jack Smith has to have heard about this long before. And then they have this audio tape of Donald Trump showing classified documents to people in Bedminster. Why has there been no search of Bedminster as of yet? I mean, I heard somebody say there wasn't enough evidence. Well, what I just heard sounds like plenty of evidence to at least check it out.
Well, this thought just popped in my head, but maybe they have searched Bedminster.
Could be, could be.
And because if thinking back to when they raided Mar-a-Lago, how did we know they raided Mar-a-Lago? Donald Trump talked about it.
Right, right.
We heard about it through Trump. Now, if they can completed the search after they did Mar-a-Lago, and maybe somebody got through to Donald Trump being like, "Hey, look, you talked about it last time, and if you talk about it again, you're going to look like a loser." Maybe if they put it in words he'd understand, maybe he wouldn't talk about it. I find it unlikely,
Yeah.
but maybe that's what happened.
Yeah. The thing about it is what you alluded to. The interesting part of this, they had this trial for the classified documents going on in Florida, mainly because that's where the documents were. And they were afraid that if they did it in DC because of the National Archives, that they would complain about it and force them to go down to Florida. So they just went down there. Jack just went down there just to not have that trouble. But if there are, in fact, classified documents in New Jersey, you're absolutely right. That's an entirely new case and an entirely new jurisdiction, a jurisdiction that's not going to be as friendly to Donald Trump as what Alien Cannon in Florida is at this point. So that could be very interesting. And that may be what Jack Smith has in his back pocket.
Could very well be, and it could be that he's been holding. We were speculated about this back when it all happened too. That why hasn't it come out? Is maybe he's holding this in his back pocket, being like, "Okay, well, you're fucking around too much. Okay, convene a grand jury. Here's new charges. Here's all my evidence." They come back with charges in 3 weeks to a month, and they just jump ship to New Jersey and uh indict him up there. Could be his plan all along. Maybe he does that instead of dealing with the 11th Circuit. I'm also wondering if he's not going to wait until he goes to the 11th Circuit to get rid of Aileen Cannon and then bring in charges in New Jersey just to add more pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be. I mean, what we're seeing out of Aileen Cannon now is kind of interesting. She was really one sided toward Donald Trump. And then when Jack Smith kind of made uh, a sidewise threat that he was going to the 11th Circuit if she didn't stop making dumb decisions. I mean, he called her out on the idea of releasing all those names from the witness list, and he said that's just wrong, and you either correct your decision or I'm going to the 11th Circuit. Now she's kind of backtracking a little bit on what's going on. I mean, they have a hearing coming up on the 14th or 15th, a couple days away. And that was a surprise. That was quicker than they expected. But she still got to decide when this trial starts. And that will be the determining factor whether Jack Smith says, this is fucked up. I'm going to do something. I think regardless of what happens, Jack Smith, just out of the fact that it needs to be done, he's going to get her booted one way or another. I really believe that he has the plan and the
Oh,
trap set up. She's going to be gone.
I think so, and I think he said maybe I'm putting too much faith in Jack Smith, but I wonder if he isn't setting a trap not only big enough to kick her out for um everything involving just the trial itself and getting her replaced,
Right.
but if he isn't pushing to get her disbarred or something so she gets kicked off the bench because of how egregious she's handling this big of a case. I mean, her being removed from the bench needs to happen anyway. She shouldn't be there, but maybe that's part of his plan. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but
Well, I think Jack has shown that he knows what he's doing. He thinks ahead. And I think with Aileen Cannon, she's got two problems. She's certainly biased toward Donald Trump, but she's inexperienced and not that bright. She makes some stupid decisions. I mean, if you're biased toward Donald Trump and you're a good judge, you at least make it look good. And she's not been able to do that. She looks like she's making dumb decisions because she is. She's not even good at trying to cover it.
exactly like, this idea of releasing the witness list, which is outside the norm of what they usually do. Like, there's one, I'm not saying judges should favor one side or the other. They're supposed to be impartial. But if she was going to lean Donald Trump's way, it shouldn't be on stuff that's so against just the norm of how a court operates that it's so blatant. Almost anybody can look at it and go, oh my God, what is she doing? And
Well,
that's the problem right now.
yeah, and over above that, the very fact that every name they release puts them in literal danger. I mean, we've seen these people harassed and stalked and threatened. Um, it's just not a good it's just not a good look. You don't put people in the line of fire if you know that's a potentiality. And anytime Donald Trump is involved and names get released, these people all go through hell. I mean, look at the judges and lawyers in New York. It's ridiculous. It's unprecedented how much bullshit they go through, whether Donald Trump directs it or not, or these people just do it of their own volition. It doesn't matter. It's Donald Trump is the source of this behavior.
Yeah, he is. And for some reason, people buy into the hype and the bluster. Um, it's amazing to me how many people still believe the bullshit coming out of Donald Trump's mouth. Like, I was talking with a Trump-fuck coworker of mine just the other day, and we were talking about something about the weather in Florida because he's from Florida. And I commented on a couple reasons why I wouldn't want to live in Florida, including the villages. And I said, and they got that android like governor who just doesn't seem very personable. And he's like, oh, DeSantis is the best thing about the state, And he goes, oh, it's just the liberal media making you seem like he seems like, uncaring and unpersonal and an android. Like, no, I've seen the video myself. He goes, yeah, it's the same media machine that makes you think Donald Trump is a racist. No, it's not the media machine. I listen to his damn words. I'm not so enamored with the bluster and the bravado coming out of him. I think they get so wrapped up just in the emotion and the way he carries himself. I don't think they actually hear any of the words Donald Trump really says outside
No,
of the catchphrases they want to hear.
no, I don't think they do, or they don't care. The thing about it is that I get the feeling a little bit now, and maybe I'm just looking at this hopefully. I'm seeing the Donald Trump force, the people that follow him. I see it kind of dissipating a little bit or starting to crumble. I mean, there's still a long way to go. He still has a lot of supporters in spite of the shit he says, but I feel like he's losing ground now. Do you get that sense?
Oh, I definitely feel that he's losing ground. I don't see near the Trump hats, the Trump flags, and all of that that are going around like we did going into 2020, and I don't hear nearly the rhetoric out of every the Trump fucks that are in my area anyway. Not like I did. Um, So I think they're going back under their rocks. I think they're realizing it's not. They're hopefully he's going to win, but I think they're preparing for him not to.
I think they are, and it's interesting. They will continue doing what they're doing when he does lose, and he will most certainly lose. Everything that's negative to Donald Trump or to the Republicans, they call it a hoax or a fake or whatever. And it's just it ends up being such a childish explanation as to why they lost. I don't think they even realize how stupid they look when they say that. Uh, like Ron DeSantis is a great guy and Florida is a great place to be. Now, I like Florida, but it's not a great place. And I talk to people in Florida and they say the same thing. Anybody with a reasonable mind doesn't like what's going on in Florida.
Exactly. I mean, from what I've seen, Florida sounds like a shithole.
Yeah.
And but I think part of it is they get wrapped up in the bluster, and they also get wrapped up, especially with maybe Donald Trump because he did win. They get wrapped up more in this identity politics, or my side has to win. So if I think some of the Trump-fucks, I really do, they don't care as much about even about the policies that they think they believe in, is if their side came out supporting some of the stuff that Joe Biden's doing, if it was their people saying it, they would want it done just to get it done and take the win.
Right. Right. Well, and they must not listen because they're willing to vote against their own better judge, their own self-interest. I mean, we know that Donald Trump has embraced overturning Roe v. Wade. He said it was his deal, that he was responsible for it. He's taking credit for it. And we know that it's very unpopular in this country. 75% of the people support Roe v. Wade, and we're talking Democrats and Republicans both. So he's not helping himself at all in the Republican Party. But he for some reason thinks this is going to be a winner for him. Should have learned something in 2022, but Donald Trump just doesn't have the sense, or he's just unwilling to back down on anything.
I'd agree. I think it's he doesn't want to back down. He can't if he were to change his stance and admit that backing that policy was bad, in his mind, changing your opinion on anything ever makes you look like a loser.
Yeah. Yep.
And if you're not coming from and it makes you look weak, so no matter what, you have to be right and you're going to force people to see it your way or you're a loser. And I've never resonated with that kind of personality. I didn't like him when he ran in 2016. Um, I told my mom, we got into a political argument. She didn't like Hillary. Again, her biggest complaint about Hillary was pro-choice. And my mom is very much a pro-life advocate. And and she can't see the difference between an abortion and a DNC. To her, those are two entirely separate things. Like treatment for a miscarriage is not an abortion, even though they're medically the same procedure. To
Right.
her, she sees a very distinct line there. Um, and she believes anybody who gets a quote abortion procedure is killing an actual baby. And I was telling him like this is not the year to vote on that issue. But because Hillary was pro-choice, she couldn't bring herself to vote for Hillary, so she supported Donald Trump. And I'm like, I can't. Look at how he talks. He's the only one who knows everything about everything. He's the only one who can fix everything. I can't tolerate that kind of arrogance
No.
from our president. You assemble a cabinet for a reason.
Well, not only arrogance, but ignorance, because as much as he takes full credit for overturning Roe v. Wade, now just yesterday, he comes out and says, yeah, I might be willing to cut Social Security and Medicare. The fuck are you thinking? I mean, you think overturning Roe v. Wade pisses a lot of people off. That pisses everybody off, cutting Medicare and Social Security. The idea of even considering that. I know that's something the Republicans love to talk about, but it's never going to happen. It would be too much of a backlash from everybody in this country. But he just grasps onto it. He apparently doesn't understand that this is the death knell to his campaign. He's embracing uh, Roe v. Wade and overturning that, and now cutting people's livelihoods away. He's for that, and now he's trying to back off
The
of it. But somebody maybe should
the
tell him ahead
irony,
of time.
well, the irony of him saying, well, "I want to cut Social Security," when here shortly he's going to be so damn broke he's only going to be living on Social Security.
That's true.
You know, that's kind of funny, but no, it's because he doesn't get it. He has never had to live a life of struggle
No,
of any kind. Whenever he's had a problem, he's been able to bullshit his way out of it, leverage a property, do it, refinance a loan or do whatever he's had to do to get out, grift money from somebody, something. And he's always gotten out of a financial hole until now, where the everyday person, there's a lot of our retired seniors that their only support is that Social Security check. That's it.
exactly.
That's the only money they're making. And he wants to cut that back. He doesn't understand what he's even talking about because he's not coming from that position.
Right, right. Yeah, the guy is just oblivious. There's a certain amount of ignorance there, and it's what I've said before. Donald Trump doesn't think at all about what he's saying. He's very reactive, very emotional, and he spews whatever comes into his head and goes out his mouth whenever it happens. He's so arrogant that he thinks that anything he says is absolute brilliance, and he doesn't question it, even though he's frequently caught saying something stupid. It doesn't affect him. He just keeps behaving that way, and it's killing him. I mean, he's going to go to jail and he's going to be broke, and it's all due to his mouth.
Yeah, oh yeah. Did you hear about his Plan 47? What
I've
he's
heard
put
about
out
it.
on his website is effectively his campaign platform.
I've heard about it. I haven't read it though. So please tell us about it.
Well, I don't remember all of it. I have not read it myself. I was listening to Under the Desk News on TikTok, and V on Under the Desk News did a very good job of breaking it down. But here's some of it that I remember. He wants to reinitiate on day one, have the biggest deportation event in American history. He wants to shut down the border, fix the border crisis, basically, the manufactured border crisis. Then he wants to let's see, use the FBI and the DOJ to investigate the Biden crime family, of course. He wants to turn around, release, and pardon all of the January Sixers. He wants to launch a full investigation into anybody responsible for investigating, prosecuting, or jailing the Jan Sixers. Drill, drill, drill. Trying to remember the rest. I think there was something about the abortion ban. He wants to ban transgenderism, all affirmative action or gender affirming care for anyone, children's or adults, um, nationwide. And that was, I think there was another tax cut for billionaires. And I can't remember. There was even more. Basically, everything in it. Oh, death penalty for pedophiles and sex traffickers, which that is the only one out of his plan that I think could see getting traction with a lot of people.
Yeah,
Um,
he should be the
but
first
it was just,
first guy prosecuted.
I mean, he did visit Epstein's Island, and he was friends with the guy.
Yeah,
So
this is kind of what I said all along is that as Donald Trump gets further and further painted into the corner, it's going to get wilder and it's going to get crazy and he's going to say some outrageous stuff. He knows he's in some deep trouble, so he has to reach a long way in hopes that it'll drag him out of the abyss here. Uh, but I don't think he even understands how crazy this all sounds and how much this would work against him in an election as opposed to help him. See, he thinks it's going to help him. He thinks there's going to be some white knight, somebody like Daddy or Russia, or somebody coming in to save him. And I don't think he's grasped that there is nobody there to save him. He's done for all intents and purposes, and he can wait for that hero to come by, but it ain't coming.
Yeah, exactly. He's always had that savior. I mean, there was the story about how his dad got him the money to save one of his casinos that time,
Right.
where his dad sent the employee in to cash in, I think it was $2 million or $5 million, something like that, into the high limit room of his casino. Cash changed it all for poker chips and walked out, never placed one bet.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But they got around the taxes that way. But like, he's always had somebody backing him up. He's always been able to weasel his way out of it. And that, you're right, that's not coming anymore.
Well, and the thing about it is that's how Donald Trump does business. It's always shrouded in secrecy or just weirdness. The idea of Dad going down, buying $5 million worth of poker chips and then throwing them in the closet, thereby giving Donald Trump $5 million. I mean, the whole thing is as shady as can be. I don't even know if it's illegal, but if you're as old as Donald Trump was and you run a casino and you still need Daddy to help you out, that should be a red flag that you don't know what the fuck you're doing, because you shouldn't be losing money in a casino. We since we're talking about money, we have to talk about the money he posted. He was required to post some money this past weekend, to the tune of $91 million in order to satisfy his attempt to appeal E. Jean Carroll's case. And somehow he got the money, and somehow he got a bond from Federal Insurance, which is an offshoot of Chubb Insurance. Then I hear people talking about that there's some connection with Russia. I don't know if that's a thing in this situation, but I'd be intrigued to find out what caused this insurance company to feel comfortable in giving him this bond. He's not a good risk, and he doesn't have all that much to back it up and be collateral.
Well, I've seen a couple things about that. One thing I saw said basically, I can't remember the guy's name. It was somebody that Donald Trump had elevated to some position, like undersecretary of something. Was the former CEO of Chubb. So it sounds like it might just be, returning a favor type deal. But the other thing I saw said he had to put up something that was debt free that they could effectively liquidate if they had to. So, he could have given him $91 million worth of stock in a company or something like that, that was effectively, it wouldn't have had to been a piece of physical property. If he had if he had a life insurance policy with a cash value on himself worth 90 million, he could have put that up as collateral. It didn't have to be a physical piece of property.
Okay. The thing about it is,
That's
though,
what
the thing I don't understand about it, though, is it's still kind of messy when they put up this bond. Now, when somebody puts up a bond like this, they make Donald Trump pay a 20% premium or something like that. So if you put up 90 million, they put up 90 millions, that theoretically means that Donald Trump had to write him a check for $18 million that they put in their pocket. Donald Trump never sees again. The 90 million go in there. Now, you presume if he wins the appeal, they get the 90 million back. Everybody's cool. The bond company made their profit, but that's not going to happen. Donald Trump is going to lose that appeal, and then they're going to suck up that $90 million. And if you have any intelligence at all, you could see that coming. So that means the people who put up the bond made the 20%, and now the 90 million is going to go away ultimately 6 months, maybe a year, depending on how the appeal goes. Now they have to go through this whole process to cash out whatever they got as collateral. That seems like a lot of work to go through to make that 20%. That's why I'm thinking there's got to be, like you say, a connection, a friend, a favor owed or something, because nobody knowing for sure that they're going to suck up that money would do this. If it looked like he was going to get the appeal, that's one thing. Then it's clean and easy. But there's no way that's going to happen. And they have to be smart enough to see that.
Yeah, the only thing I just was thinking about it is if he put up, say, $91 million of worth of stock in whatever company that he knew he could sell free and clear today for 90 million, like what happens if says, okay, I'm going to put up 200 shares, whatever, 2,000 shares, whatever it was, whatever that number is. And the price goes up. Are they hedging their bet, hoping they could make some money on that stock? And let's say those shares of stock are now worth 100 million. Do they get the 100 million value back when they
Yeah,
sell it? Maybe there's something like that where they know if this goes south, they're going to get additional money above and beyond
right. I mean,
the
that's
initial fee.
That's one of the things I thought. It's one thing to have them put up the 91 million, then Donald Trump give them 91 million of equity or insurance or whatever it is. But if you know you're going to go through that process and you're a businessman of any type, I would say, I'll put up the 90 million. I want the premium up front, the 20% or whatever. But if I'm going to use your shit as collateral, I'm going to need $150 million of collateral in order to give you this 90 so that they can make it worth their risk. They're going to have to liquidate something. I mean, that's the weird thing about it is they did this. He put up this bond in order to avoid having E. Jean Carroll's lawyer liquidate his shit. All he did is put out off the inevitable because he had to have his shit as collateral. He's going to lose the appeal. They're going to take the money. And now Chubb is going to liquidate his shit. The end result is the same. It's just a matter of who gets to do it.
Yeah, but Donnie Trump doesn't see it that way. He thinks he's going to win this appeal because he didn't get to prove his innocence or whatever bullshit claim he's got, because he doesn't understand that the fact of whether or not he did this wasn't on trial. Like, he doesn't comprehend that
No.
because he's never faced accountability like this in his life. He's always been able to do what he wants, say what he wants with no real ramifications. Everything's made him more money, more popular. You know, the old adage of no no press is bad press or something like that. Was what he lived by. He could say the most outrageous stuff and it just made people talk about him, so he thought it was a good thing.
Well, and
Well,
yeah, the thing is with Donald
um,
Trump, his mentality is such. I'm familiar with the mentality because I've dealt with people like that. These people think they're so amazing and they think they're so magical that if I just get a little time, I can flip the script. I can do something different. So when Donald Trump does this and buys a little time, he honestly believes that he's going to come up with an answer, a resolution, and be fine. And then he's so oblivious when he gets to that point and it doesn't happen, then he'll just push the goalpost back and say, well, all I need is another week and I'll turn this shit around. I think they really believe these narcissists are so impressed with themselves that they really believe they're going to be able to pull themselves from the depths. They keep getting disappointed, but you can't tell a narcissist he's an idiot because they'll never believe it. They think something's going to happen by way of their will or their skill to fix everything, even though it never happens.
reminds me of a friend of mine. Not nearly on the scale of Donald Trump, and he doesn't have the same attitude, but when it comes to money, he's kind of the same way. He'll go and, oh, power bills due. Well, okay, I can, if I give them my checking account, they won't take it for 2 days. I can figure out how to pay it in 2 days. Okay, well, now let's hit my bank account. It's negative. Oh crap! Run over to the pawn shop, pawn some stuff. Oh, paid that. A month later, shop's asking for, well, you got to pay your loan or we're going to sell your stuff. Oh, don't want to lose my stuff. Got to go figure something out to do that. Then he's got to pay them.
You know, this
And
this
he's
is
just constantly borrowing from one bill to pay another bill.
this is a symptom of desperation too, because I know I've been there, you know. You got to pay the light bill, but if you pay the light bill, you'll get an overdraft and they're going to charge you $30 for the overdraft. And you figure, well, I'd rather pay the $30 than have the lights go off. So you do that. And then it just kind of culminates. It's like a snowball effect. You're stealing from Peter to pay Paul. You're juggling, you're bouncing it one way and then another way. And eventually you drop all the balls and you crash. But during that time, you are hustling your ass off just to keep your head above water. And I think that's where Donald Trump is now. He's trying to balance back and forth. It will ultimately fail. But I've, you know, on a much smaller scale, but when I was younger and didn't have any money, I was in that situation one or two times. You got kids, you got a house, you got bills, you got less money than bills, and now you're trying to fucking balance it. And that desperation, you figure, okay, I don't know if I can do this or not, but I have no choice. So this is my only option. And I kind of get a sense that's where Donald Trump is now.
Oh yeah, I do too. I feel like he's literally just bouncing around paying bill to bill, and his brain is so scattered. I think that's part of what's leading him to do some of the things he's done. I mean, just over the weekend, he defames E. Jean Carroll again
Yeah.
because paying and coming up with this bond was forefront on his mind when he was at his rally. That was what he was talking about. In a week or so, when they start wanting to seize his properties, if he doesn't come up with the money in Letitia James, that's all he's going to be talking about because that's what he's thinking about. Because the pressure's too great, he can't think of more than one crisis at a time.
Yeah. Well, if he was a smart man, after he defamed E. Jean Carroll and was found liable for sexual assault and was fined $5 million, the decision should be easy. I shut my mouth, I pay the $5 million, and I move on to my next problem. But he can't do that because he's so butthurt about being looking like he lost that case. So he has to fight back. So he does fight back. He gets another defamation of character lawsuit. And this time it's $83 million because the jury said, well, five didn't work. We better make it hurt this time. And it did work for a little while. But as you say, he's down in Georgia and he pays this 91 million. So it's fresh in his mind and he's got a bitch about it. And in the process, he defames her again. What's interesting about that defamation character, you didn't hear E. Jean Carroll's lawyer talk much about it when he did it in Georgia. Because if he did it in Georgia, not on TV, but in Georgia, then you'd have to file a lawsuit down in Georgia as opposed to what's going on in New York. But then this dumb fuck took it a step farther and repeated what he said in Georgia on CNBC. And now he can be sued again in New York, and he probably will be. Just the dumbest motherfucker in the world.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, as I said the last time we were talking about this, I guarantee if they go through another case, not that they'll have any money to pay it, but if they go through another damages phase for E. Jean Carroll, the next one's going to be at least 100 million,
Yeah.
if not over the $1 billion mark, because they're going to keep ramping it up because he's not learning, he's not getting the point.
Do you think when he, in about a week and a half, he has to come up with more than $500 million or thereabouts? He was able to come up with a 91. Do you think he'll find some kind of angel to save him again here with a bond? I find it hard to imagine. $500 million is a lot of fucking money, and we have to wonder whether he has $500 million worth of equity in any of his property.
I don't think so. I don't think he comes up with it. Um, and the other thing I was thinking with this bond for the 91 is if it was as easy as selling like shares of stock off, usually you can get that money in 2 to 3 days.
Right.
So clearly either he didn't think the smart move was just to sell the stock and pay it, or it's not something that's as easy to move. And if he's starting to move stuff like that, that's not exactly liquid and it's going to take this other company a while to sell, he's not going to be able to give anybody anything worth 450, 500 million or better for this appeal. There's no way. If he had 400 and some million in cash to pay it, he would have put the money up for the E. Jean Carroll case without getting a bond,
Right.
unless he just has 500, unless he only has the 500 million or so. And he
Yeah.
thought this was his way of being able to put up the money for both.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. That business, I'm not an expert on that business, but that business is all about property. They don't usually carry a lot of cash. All the cash is put back into property so it can generate an income. Um, I'd be surprised if many big developers or people like Donald Trump actually keep a half a billion in the fucking bank. That doesn't even that doesn't even make financial sense in spite of what Donald Trump has said about this. Um, it's it's if in fact he can't come up with the $450 million and then New York starts liquidating his stuff. Again, it goes back to what I said. All he's doing is delaying the inevitable. Now, the fact that he posted the bond for 91 million in the E. Jean Carroll case, I'm glad because that means E. Jean Carroll's getting paid regardless. She's getting paid. Now, whoever borrowed it to him might get fucked down the road, and that wouldn't surprise me. But this is going to be the tipping point for Donald Trump. A $500 million he's got to come up with. Nobody's going to give him a bond for that much. I can't imagine any bond company or insurance company has that free cash to risk on a clown like that motherfucker.
Yeah, you're probably right. Even this federal insurance, or Chubb or whatever, if they wanted to do it, I bet you they would have to find a way to leverage something to put up $500 million.
Oh yeah,
Um, I mean, it's not that easy. You can't just go down to your local bank and request $500 million cash. And I know it's not exactly like he'd be walking in with a briefcase full of money to pay this thing. I'm sure it's like a cashier's check or something like that. Like
wire.
it's not exactly cash, but the concept of is I bet you they don't have free and clear money to the point that they can do that. And if they do, they're doing something wrong as a business.
Yeah, if you have that kind of money, it should be invested. It shouldn't be just sitting in a checking account someplace. So it does take some time to get it. And of course, Donald Trump will run it down to the last fucking minute. And he either will get it or he won't get it. This is the one that intrigues me, though, because it's a lot of money and most people don't have that kind of money. And if he doesn't come up with it and they start liquidating his shit, I think what people have to understand is it's not about him losing his properties when it comes to the financial aspect of it. The big thing for Donald Trump is the embarrassment of it, the appearance of looking like he lost a case. And now these people are doing whatever the hell he wants. In terms of getting collateral, the other part of it I don't understand is he's in receivership. He can't just throw around his property. He's got to get okays. He's got to go through somebody else. So that makes it that much tougher to get this shit done.
Yeah, that was the other thing about the 91 million that they said it had to be tied to something that wasn't connected to any of the Trump organization stuff that was in receivership.
Right.
So whatever he had that he was able to leverage for 91 million, whether, who knows what it could have been. But whatever it was, he uh he came up with it. But yeah, there's no way he's going to be able to leverage anything for $500 million. It
No,
ain't going to happen.
no, it's not possible. Well, Eric, I'm going to take a quick break here and we'll be right back. We've got some other stuff to talk about, so stick around. We will take a break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Eric from Iowa is joining us today, talking about all things Donald Trump, Republicans, Democrats, whatever. A lot of shit to talk about. Now, Eric, we're 13 days away from the start of the Manhattan District trial, the criminal trial. 34 felony charges against Donald Trump. A lot of people look at it as the hush money case with Stormy Daniels. It's actually more than that. It has to do with election interference. So it's some serious cases. Now, I don't know if you've heard, Donald Trump is all about trying to delay things. And he's really reaching at times. He comes up with some crazy shit. And on this particular trial, because it's coming so closely, he's taken a shot here too. He said the trial should be paused to wait for the Supreme Court to come back with a decision on whether he has absolute immunity at this point. The weird thing about this is that when he first got this case, when he first caught this case, he tried to bring it to the federal court. And when that didn't work, he essentially waived the whole immunity thing. He waived the immunity thing. Not to mention the fact that all the crimes he committed were during the campaign prior to being the president. So presidential immunity isn't a thing here. I know we were talking about it beforehand, and maybe you can mention it again. He's really fucking reaching here, and it's not likely to work.
The little bit I saw on that was it was basically that Donald Trump tweeted about it when he was president. So therefore he's saying, well, I talked about it when I was president, so I get immunity because I was president, which is so ridiculous. I know you usually say, it's a Hail Mary pass.
Yeah.
This is worse. This is what I would call this, using a football analogy. He's down by 48, 1 minute to go in the game. He's on his own 1 yard line and he's trying a quarterback sneak.
Right. Blindfolded. It's just, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. I mean, it's really, really, really a stretch. The one difference has to deal with here is he's not dealing with a civil court. He's dealing with a criminal court. He's not dealing with Judge Engeron. He's dealing with Judge Juan Marchand, and he's more of a no nonsense guy. I don't see him playing games. Now, I don't know if Donald Trump can bring it to him and then have that denied, if he can appeal it and go through that process. I don't know. I don't even know if he could bring it to the Supreme Court. I find that hard because it's a state criminal court, so I'd be surprised if he could do that. But Donald Trump will try to do everything he can to delay it. I'm just hoping they shut him down quick and get this trial started.
Yeah. I mean, this terrifies him
Yeah, well,
because
yeah,
he's going to have to sit there every day, you know, and he's not going to be able to sit there and fidget and speak out and say whatever's on his mind. And if he starts bad mouthing the judge will probably warn him once, but like, look, here's a list of things you can't say or do inside or outside of my courtroom, even when we're on a break. And he'll get one warning and he'll probably be off to a cell.
right.
And I know this
Yeah, he's absolutely terrified. You know what he's most terrified of, though? Again, because he's a narcissist, he's terrified of the embarrassment, the details of this case, the Stormy Daniels, and all the salacious things that have been said about it, from the shape of his penis to whatever the fuck it is. He's worried about the embarrassment of this. I think that's freaking him out more than anything. Um, so this is getting in Donald Trump's head, and he is desperately worried, and he was going to try anything he can to delay it. And I don't think he'll be able to do it.
Didn't he try to say, I thought I read something that he was trying to ban Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen,
Right.
and somebody else from testifying and some other evidence from being admitted. And basically, in a long worded filing as to why they can't, it was Michael Cohen's going to perjure himself, and basically the rest of it would just make me look bad, I think was the boiled down reason. And of course, it didn't go anywhere. But the
No,
fact that he's trying, he is terrified of how this case is going to make him look. Just the fact that, so now, if I understand the story correctly, it's not that he just had an affair with Stormy Daniels. She didn't like just agree. I think he paid her for her time to be with him, I
right,
believe.
right.
Now, if that's the case, that spears and kills any of his credibility of I'm the manly man, I can get any woman I want. Just, grab them by the genitals and we'll do what you want. Well, if he had to pay her for her time, that, is going to be so damaging to his ego.
Yeah.
I'll be able to hear it fracture all the way out here.
Every time I hear about Stormy Daniels and I think about him paying for the time he spent with her over and above the money he paid for her to keep quiet, it reminds me of an old joke back in the day when you'd look at somebody and go, you're so ugly. Your dad has to tie a pork chop around your neck to have the dog play with you. And and that's kind of the way it is with Donald
Yeah,
Trump.
I've heard that one.
He is repellent.
I've heard that one.
I don't think anybody likes Donald Trump. They don't mind being associated with him when he was rich and famous and could do things for him, but he's quickly becoming a pariah, and more people are stepping away from him because, well, first of all, he stinks, and second of all, he's coming off incredibly dumb. But this has been my point all along. March 25th is going to be a devastating day for Donald Trump. March 25th, he is the deadline for him to post $500 million bond. That's 24th or 25th is the deadline. And then the criminal case starts on March 25th. And this is going to be a much different situation than he's used to. He pop in and out with these civil trials. In these criminal trials, he's going to have to sit there day after day, 8, 10 hours a day, listen to shit he doesn't want to hear, get embarrassed by the shit that's being said, and he's going to have to sit there every day. And this ADHD motherfucker is going to have a problem doing that.
Oh, very much so. And like I said earlier, he's going to sit there and he's only going to get maybe one or two outbursts before it's not going to be they're not going to start fining him. It's going to be jail time
Yeah.
for contempt of court. And, you know, I just, if I'm almost confident enough, if anybody was taking bets, I would put everything I have down that he gets a contempt of court charge in that trial sometime and spends at least some time inside a jail cell. I would almost be willing to put everything I own up against it. Not
Yeah.
quite, but almost.
Well, in civil court, the only real remedy for any kind of thing there is money. So that was the first go to in civil court. But we're in criminal court right now. We have a pretty serious judge in Juan Marchand, and he's not going to want Donald Trump acting a fool in front of the jury and the media and all this sort of stuff. His first go to is going to be a jail cell. It may be for 1 or 2 days, but it will be interesting to see if Donald Trump does spend a day or two in jail, what that does to him. Now, knowing his personality, you would think it might settle somebody down and cause them to be quiet, and it might for a little bit of time, but eventually he's going to get mad and he's going to have to hit back. That's what he says he always does. I always hit back harder. Well, that's not going to work too well with a judge in a courtroom. You try to go toe to toe with a judge, you're going to fucking lose big.
Oh yeah. And I mean, what does he think? He tries to go toe to toe with the judge. Like, I know he's not going to do anything physical with the judge.
No.
But in what he mouths off to the judge, that's only going to go so far for a little bit of time. And in a criminal case, no, he's getting held, and I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
Well, what do you think? How do you think this goes on from the 25th? Say he can't come up with the 500 million, and then the state of New York starts cherry picking his shit and starts liquidating it. He has to deal with that. He's in trial for the next 2.5 months every day. The idea that he's not going to get convicted or he's going to run the table on that trial is just ridiculous. There's 34 felony charges, and he has a district attorney who has a 91% conviction rate. He's going to get convicted of some things. And this is going to, where I think it's going to be the downfall of Donald Trump. Everybody's worried about all the other cases not starting before the election and all this stuff. I think these two things bring Donald Trump down pretty hard. We're going to see a different Donald Trump after he experiences this shit.
Well, this thought just popped in my head as you were explaining all that. What happens when up to, or he could have been opposing his attorneys for this criminal trial, because I know there's only certain reasons why you can get out of being their attorney.
Yeah.
So what happens when Letitia James starts and the receiver starts liquidating his shit and getting rid of everything, and suddenly the well's dry and he's got no money to pay his legal fees? It's going to affect his representation in this case, and he's going to end up in a world of hurt. I don't see him running the table. I think once they start seizing properties, though, I think at least some of the defeatists will stop with their defeatist attitude on it, and they'll be like, oh, well, maybe he will get beaten, and maybe some of the stuff will come to pass. But I think by the end of the 2.5 months or 3 months, whatever this trial runs its course, I just don't see any way of him running the table on 34 felonies.
No.
All in a documents case where they're just showing up going paperwork, 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 paperwork.
Right.
And a lot of it with his signature on it. It's open and shut, and I think he's going to be done, and the Republican Party is going to be left broke, disorganized, and, as you like to say, with their least favorable appendage in their hand.
Yeah. Smallest, their smallest appendage in their hand. Yeah. Or least impressive. Something like that. I just made that shit up, so I don't even remember what I said. But no, that's exactly it. But everybody's so worried about what about the classified documents? What about DC? If you're only looking at taking Donald Trump out of the mix, you don't need all those things to happen. They all will ultimately happen, whether it be before or after the election. It really doesn't matter. All we need is enough to take him out of the mix right now. And honestly, I think the Manhattan district and taking all of his money. I mean, you can only kick a dead dog so many times. By the time he goes to his last trial, there ain't going to be nothing left of him. What are you going to do? So we just have to take him out of the mix at this point, and I think this is what's going to do it.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is people get too fixated on this idea of, well, he needs to be convicted for every crime he's committed. No, he doesn't.
No.
He just needs to have enough jail time that he's not going to see the light of day again. It's, it's unfortunate, but we don't need him convicted for every crime he's committed. Him going down and being locked away, on top of what he is doing to the Republican Party, is the two best outcomes out of all of this.
Well, exactly. The thing about it is I'll get people coming to me and saying, well, this isn't that big a case. I've heard people say that very few people get jail time with these kinds of crimes. Now, I don't know if that's true. People pull shit out of their ass. But at this stage of the game, if he's convicted, he will then appeal it, and that will take some time, probably past the election. But I don't think he has to physically be in jail. He might be, but I don't think he has to physically be in jail to be taken down. The conviction itself is enough, or multiple convictions, because we know what the polls have said, that if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony, that changes the whole prospects of how people are going to vote. And not to mention, the emotional dis- distress he will have by having been convicted of multiple crimes. He can try to divert, distract, and delay, but by that time it's too late. All I want to see is minimum 3 convictions, and I'm just pulling that out of the air. But if you've got a guy with a 98% conviction rate and you've got 34 felony charges, if Alan Bragg has a bad day, he only gets 17. And 17 is pretty fucking devastating.
Yeah, I think this case puts Donald Trump out. Um, I don't know if these would be crimes that would be enough where he would have to be in prison a pending appeal, but that very well could be, depending on how many years he's looking at, et cetera. They could realistically look at him and say, well, you have to do, you're going to prison until your appeal, if you win your appeal, you'll be set free. But otherwise you're going as of today.
Right.
Unlike the contempt of Congress charge for, say, Steve Bannon, but where he's out on appeal, and that's pissing me off. But anyway, I think he's going to get jail time out of this. Like you said, the polls all say if he gets convicted of these crimes and he's a convicted felon, it brings his support down to like 30% of the nation or something like
Right.
that, 25%.
Right.
And as long as he's connected to the Republican Party, after that, if they still try to run with him as their nominee after he's been convicted of these crimes, it is only going to hurt them down ballot.
Well, think about this too. You got to look at the long haul on this thing. People say, well, he better get 10 years. And in these cases, I don't think he'll get, well, he might ultimately cumulatively, but say he only gets a year or 10 years or a year or 2 years. Okay. People will be disappointed by that. But first of all, I don't think Donald Trump will survive a year in jail or in prison. I just don't think he will. But over and above that, while he's sitting in jail, his other trials are coming to fruition. If he goes into jail, you know, 6 months from now for a year, by the time he's ready to come out, he's got at least 2 other trials working and he's going to get convicted there and get more jail time. So whether he gets convicted with a lot of years or just a couple of years in these first cases really doesn't matter. It takes him out of the mix and just puts him on ice until the next one hits him. And that puts him on ice till the next one hits him. He'll fucking die in prison if he ends up in prison.
That, and the biggest thing is, now I know that it's possible to smuggle things in, but I think it would be tighter security around him, given that he's a former president.
Yeah.
But it would take him off of social media. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have access to Facebook, and he wouldn't get his weekly call into Fox News, and none of the news stations would be covering him. And he wouldn't be putting out stuff 3 a.m. rants on Truth Social. It won't happen.
No.
And that alone is going to be good for the country. Even if he only gets a year or two with him off of social media in all forms, and where the media is not talking about him, is what we need to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the time he comes out, he'll be such a broken human being. People will have forgotten about him and gone on to something different. All we need to do is take him out of the mix for a couple of years and then he's done, because he'll be 80 by then and he will probably not be in the best health. He will have spent time in prison. He'll be a pariah in this country. I mean, it's real easy for him to maintain something now because he still has a little juice where he keeps people supporting him, whether out of fear or whether out of stupidity. But once he goes away and there's no reason to support him anymore, that interest and that support will go away quickly and it'll get pointed someplace else.
Yeah, and even if he does only do, let's just hypothetically, if he only serves 1 year in prison out of all of his charges, and he comes out in a year, the party would have moved on. Even if he
Yeah.
came back, I'm running again. The party and his base would have probably moved past him, and he wouldn't have been able to rally enough support and money and donations to be relevant.
And I think honestly, after the November election, assuming it goes the way I think it will with a blue wave, I think whether or not Donald Trump is in prison or not, the Republican Party is going to go a different direction. They have to. They haven't won an election since 2007 or 16. They keep losing with Donald Trump. This has to be the end game. They have to say, okay, we tried, we gave it our best shot. Donald Trump isn't worth shit to us anymore. We're going to have to walk away from it. Some other, some of the Trumplafucks may stick in, but it won't be enough to make a difference.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's already looking like the MAGA movement's wearing thin. Because
Yeah.
let's see, Colorado had its primary, and I don't think Lauren Boebert won hers, did she?
No, she ended up in like fifth in a
Yeah, so she's
poll.
out of Congress.
Yeah, she's definitely out of
So she's
Congress.
done. I mean, I'm not sure about some of the other Trumplafucks, but some of these are going to get booted out. They're going to get voted out. And I think you're going to see one hell of a blue wave, especially down, with Congress and maybe even in some of the state houses and stuff, that we're going to actually get some shit done. And the MAGA movement and Republicans, for that matter, are going to be irrelevant for a while.
Oh, a long while. If they ever become relevant again, I'd be surprised. You know, I think the Republicans are going to be soon done with Donald Trump too. You heard about the situation where Donald Trump essentially fired Ronna McDaniel as the head of the RNC. He put one of his guys in there, and he also put his daughter-in-law as co-chair. That was last week. On Monday, Donald Trump's team, who's running the RNC, fired 60 people, 60 employees of the RNC, and then canceled a bunch of vending contracts. They're getting this down to the bare bones, so all money can go to Donald Trump. This is going to be Donald Trump's little piggy bank, and he's going to drain that motherfucker. Even though they don't have much money right now, he's going to drain every penny of it because he's not happy with a lot. He wants it all. He's going to take it all out of there, and that's going to leave them with zero money for all the down ballot races. And this is going to fuck over the Republican Party, and they are going to get pissed.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised that they're still allowing it to happen as is, and how they don't see. I'm guessing they're having some sort of meetings where they're saying, "Hey, is he going to steal all of our money? And is he going to rob us blind?" And the guy goes, "No, Donald wouldn't do that. He's only out to help the party. He wants you guys to all win." And then they show up a month later, bank accounts at zero or in the red, and they go, "What happened?" "Oh, Donald Trump took it all."
Right. I
That's
don't know.
probably what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It
Is Donald
looks
Trump going to,
stupid.
is Donald Trump going to steal all our money? That's a funny question. Of course he is. That's what Donald Trump does. He steals other people's money. Um, but of course, we've heard that RNC has very little cash on hand. Last I heard, it was $8 or $10 million compared to 120 million, 130 million that the DNC has. When you look at whether or not Donald Trump is going to get elected, you can look at polls and you can look at a lot of stuff. But if you simply look at the money, DNC has 120 or 130 million. The RNC has 8 or 10 million. Joe Biden has 117 million in campaign funds. Donald Trump has 30 million. The financial support is not there anymore for the Republicans or Donald Trump, and that should be a sign of things to come when we get to the election.
Oh, yeah. And it's only a matter of time. I mean, the funding's only going to get worse,
Yeah.
especially now that Donald Trump has his hands in the piggy bank of the RNC. The funds coming directly into the RNC are going to go away. You're going to start seeing the Republican donors that are donating are going to donate to things like the Republican Senate PAC, whatever that one is.
Right.
Things like that, where it's going directly to either candidates they want to support or PACs that they can kind of control where it's going, and where Donald Trump doesn't have his hands in it, because they know now for every dollar that goes to the RNC, 99 cents goes to Donald Trump.
Yeah. And we're already hearing Republicans say, I'm not donating to the RNC based on this situation with Donald Trump in control. As much as they might like and support Donald Trump, they know exactly what's going on. And the RNCs, by virtue of Donald Trump being involved, the RNC is going to have an even harder time fundraising. And it's got to get to a point where the Republicans say, a fuck enough. Every time we turn around, he's fucking something up for us. We got to stop this. I mean, money is the one thing that changes people's minds. And I think the Republicans are on the verge of get an eye-opening experience by continuing them being tied to Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I don't see how the Republican Party rebounds from this. They don't rebound quickly. It's going to take several years for them to rebound and get their donors' confidences back. They're going to have to go in, weed out anybody that was replaced by Donald Trump. Those people are all going to lose their jobs. They would have to. And it's going to take years to fix the damage just in the background of the Republican Party, let alone in the politicians and the candidates that are running. And I mean, and in that time frame, they're going to have to change and evolve and adapt and at least come forward in years, because this 1950s mentality is not going to win over voters.
No, it's not. And you know, it's surprising to me that the Republicans didn't realize this in 2020. Once they had Donald Trump out of DC and back in Mara Lago, they should have left him there like a steaming pile of shit instead of going in and welcoming him back into the party like Kevin McCarthy did. That was a huge mistake. And they're just now starting to realize how big a mistake that was.
Well, yeah, that's because almost everybody, they've pushed out everybody that was of a reasonable-ish mind, where, at one time, there were reasonable people in the Republican Party. We might have disagreed on some of their stances, but they knew better than to shoot themselves in the foot at every chance. A lot of the biggest hurdles were agreeing on dollar amounts. It wasn't so much you could work with them to get at least some things done. And I almost could guarantee right now, if they wanted to come out and rename, like, I don't know, a military base in favor of George W. Bush, if it was a Democrat suggestion, the Republicans would find a reason to shoot it down,
right?
Just because the Democrat came up with it. Whereas 20 years ago, they would have agreed and said, "Yeah, let's do it." It wouldn't be a thing. And the Republicans, they don't look now past 3 minutes in the future.
Right. Their talking points were the border, but they shut down the border bill. They want to talk about Joe Biden being taking bribes. They're proven wrong there. Their witness is a Russian asset. They want to prove that Joe Biden is a doddering old man that can't finish a sentence, and then we have the State of the Union. And they're proved wrong again. Every talking point they had to try to diminish or discredit Joe Biden has failed miserably. And in the case with the border, it's been flipped on them. Now they're the ones that are leaving the border open. It's just amazing to me that that's all they've got. That's all they've ever done is try to discredit Joe Biden, have not been able to do it. So I'm curious as to what they're going to campaign on coming up in November. They're going to keep talking about the border, no doubt, but everybody knows what the deal with the border is. That's not going to work. Joe Biden hasn't There's been no evidence of him doing anything untoward, and Joe Biden seems very cognitive. I don't know what the fuck they're going to talk about.
I don't either. I mean, they keep shooting themselves in the foot at every stance. I mean, hell, you could even get the Republicans to agree to replace Obamacare if Joe Biden played his cards right.
Right.
If he came out in favor, or no, not in replacing it, in getting rid of it, or in keeping it as is and not wanting to end it, because if Biden came out and said, "Yeah, you know what, Obamacare is not working. We need something different," Republicans would be on board for saving it and
Yeah.
strengthening it at every chance they get. It's literally that all they care about is not giving Joe Biden and any Democrat a win. They've lost the point so far. It is ridiculous. I've never seen politicians be this bad.
You know what's interesting? I was just thinking about this. Remember all the time we had the Republicans with a slight majority in the Senate, and we were all talking about getting rid of the filibuster. And of course, the Republicans were dead set against getting rid of the filibuster for obvious reasons, because that would take power away from them. Watch what happens if the Democrats expand their margin in the Senate. I'll guarantee you right now, the Republicans will be begging and doing everything they can to get rid of the filibuster. It's ironic because these people only hate the filibuster when it's working against them, and then they love it when it's working for them. I think the filibuster needs to go, regardless of what it does along the way. But I think we may be looking at the Republicans trying to get rid of the filibuster over the next 4 years.
Well, why would the Republicans want to get rid of it over the next 4 years? Because that would keep them from advancing anything Democrats want.
Well, if they're
They're
in
going to
the,
fight to keep it, I would think.
yeah, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, we were the ones that want what. See, the thing is that if you've got a pretty even Senate, um, say you say you're 49-51, okay, and you're the minority, and you want to pass something, you could theoretically pass it, getting two people to come over to your side, the likes of a Manchin or a Cinema or somebody along those lines. But it would never pass because you need 60 votes. And that was the problem with the Democrats too. You need 60 votes. You might, I mean, in the last time Donald Trump was impeached, they had 57 votes to impeach him in the Senate. 3 more votes, and he would have been kicked out because they needed 60 out of 100.
Oh,
So if the Republicans are now
they
trying to
need
come after the Democrats, they're going to want to get rid of the filibuster.
Yeah, maybe. I could see from that point of view, if they want to try to get anything passed on their end, that maybe they could get just enough support to push it past midway. They get rid of it. But I don't know. I just wish if they don't get rid of it, they need to take it back to what it used to be. Because it
Yeah.
used to be the filibuster was, if I was the senator and I said I'm going to filibuster this, I started talking and it could not pass until I stopped talking, or and then if enough people went away and they got bored and left the chamber, they would gavel it shut and then it would move on, or you could kill it that way or whatever. Now it's just simply I'm going to filibuster it, and then they never bring it up to a vote. Then nobody has to talk. They don't have to do anything.
Right.
They either need to get rid of it or make it like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and the thing about it is they made it an automatic, like you say. Nobody actually had to do anything, and there was a time when they didn't attach the filibuster to every deal. It was a rare occasion, and now with the Republicans, it was every fucking time. So basically, the rule in the Senate is if you want to pass something like this, you got to get 60 out of 100 votes, which is crazy, which is contrary to democracy.
Yeah, exactly. It used to be rare, and we used to be able to get stuff done, especially when Joe Biden was in the Senate. It was common. You'd reach across the aisle, you almost all bills were passed with some amount of bipartisan support,
Yeah.
and it wasn't one-sided politics. You know, a lot of times, as I've said several times on here, the if they wanted to send $100 billion to Ukraine, I'll use that as my good example. They both sides would negotiate, then with bipartisan support, come up to $75 billion or whatever the
Right.
number is.
Right.
They would negotiate to whatever, and it would pass with bipartisan support. There wouldn't be a threat of a filibuster. There wouldn't be any ball busting over it, and it would just come down to, okay, let's come to a number both sides can agree on, and then things pass and move on.
Right.
And that was the biggest hurdle. Now it's literally you can't do anything in Congress, and I know people are pissed.
Yeah. Well, and that's why Congress is broken. Congress is supposed to be a place where you negotiate and compromise. And for the longest time, certainly since Donald Trump's been in office, and even before that, it's so split. Republicans vote for Republican stuff, Democrats vote for Democrat stuff, and Democrats and Republicans will push and obstruct what the other one is trying to do. So you have no negotiation, you have no compromise. The only time you see that is like with this recent bill that kept the country open. They had to do that. So they came up with somewhat of a compromise between the two parties. But other than that, you don't see it. If you're a Democrat, I'm voting against you, whether I like the bill or not. Case in point, infrastructure. Everybody wanted an infrastructure bill, but the Republicans all voted against it, even though they knew better and they were going to crow about it in their hometowns when the money came pouring in. But just as a matter of principle, they vote against everything the Democrats do. And the Democrats will do it too.
Exactly. And oh yeah, and like the infrastructure plan, it was the best one we had in 50 years, which is great. It needed to be done. It probably needed to be a bigger bill than what we got.
Absolutely.
But like you said, Republicans didn't want to really support it. And I love the bit in the State of the Union where Joe Biden called him on it.
Right.
He's like, you guys, you voted against it, but you're standing there crowing about our money coming into your state to do that project that you really need the money for. Look, if you don't want the money, send it back. I got other projects we can work on, we can do with that money. And he made them look foolish.
Well, a lot of people will say that Joe Biden is old and doddering and can't speak well. I think that was proven otherwise in the State of the Union speech. But the one thing Joe Biden has shown me in the 3 years or so that he's been in office is that he's a pretty savvy motherfucker. He may not be the smoothest talker, but he knows how the game works. And that's one thing Donald Trump never knew. He never knew how to play the game. He was like a bull in a china shop. But Joe knows how to work the situation. He knows how to negotiate. He knows how to apply pressure, and he knows how to get things done. And that's all any of us could ever possibly hope for in a president. Get something fucking done.
Exactly. And the my I mean, I've got some complaints with Joe Biden. I think
Oh, yeah.
everybody does. And I know he didn't get everything he wanted to do done. One of the things he campaigned on that I'm still growly about is he campaigned on getting first time home buyers a $15,000 um, one time tax credit that you could use at closing.
Right.
And he was going to backdate it all the way to the beginning of the pandemic. Still waiting on it.
Well, you see, you heard
I bought a house not long after he took office.
you heard that he brought that up
I
again.
wanted that money.
Did you hear that he brought that
He
up again?
did.
400 a month
I
for
did.
2
I heard he
years?
brought it back up again, but he wants to do it for like going forward for 2 years, and it was an amount of money a month or something. I don't know how that would. I don't know all the details, but again, Congress would have to act to pass it, and he wants to do that. Great, I'm all for it. but I wish he would go back to his plan from a personal level of going back to the beginning of the pandemic, because it's not the only reason I voted for him, but he campaigned on it. I loved the idea of a $15,000 tax credit. I bought my house in the time frame that he campaigned on that he would give us the credit.
Right. I mean,
So personally, I would love to see it.
you can't, like with the student loan too, you can't hold him totally responsible. They can say he said he was going to do it and he didn't do it. It isn't that he didn't want to do it or didn't try to do it or doesn't continue to try to do it. It comes down to Republicans in the House and the Senate that block it. Um, you gotta put the onus where it
Yeah,
belongs, and that's in Congress. The only reason you didn't get that credit is because of fucking Congress.
true. I do blame Congress. I mean, Joe Biden is sitting on the verge of being able to do a lot. If we need to give him a majority again in the House,
Yeah,
a slightly bigger majority in the Senate, so we can get some shit done.
yeah, yeah,
And one of the things he's got to get done, he has got to get our Supreme Court figured out. I saw something about that on TikTok. They were talking about three Supreme Court justices that need to be dealt with soon. Uh, and one of them is it Sotomayor,
yeah,
I think, and that she should retire now, or if Joe Biden wins re-election, she should resign and retire after he wins re-election. So she gets replaced guaranteed by a Democrat. And then the other two names that got brought up for potential retirement in the next 4 years were Alito and Thomas.
yeah. They might. Some people have said though that they won't unless Donald Trump wins because they're so adamant about getting Republicans in there. Now they might retire for other reasons. They might run into some legal issues or some impeachment issues where it's expeditious to them to just take a powder. But that kind of pressure should be applied in 2024 and beyond. We should push to get those fucks out because they are a cancer in the Supreme Court, and without a legitimate Supreme Court, it's hard to maintain a democracy.
It is. And one of the things I might have been reading a little more into it, being a history fan that I am. I thought it was interesting at the State of the Union that Joe Biden referenced both FDR,
Right.
and he was talking about the Supreme Court. I realized they were in two different parts of the speech, but he kind of said something to the Supreme Court and basically said, straighten your shit out or we're coming for you, because all of this is your fault, and laid Roe v. Wade at their feet, which is where it belongs. But um, it reminded me of how FDR dealt with the New Deal
Mm-hmm.
and basically said, hey, we're doing this. Sure, you can try to overrule me, and then you do that, we'll expand the court and pass something just as good or better a second time, and try to stop me then.
Yeah,
And I kind of felt like Joe Biden was very subtly hinting that to the Supreme Court.
I think he was. I think it surprised them. And if you looked at their faces, they were very stoic. But he basically said, "I don't think you have any idea how powerful politically women are, but you're about to find out." And I think that's good. A good message to the Republican Party. They want to marginalize women, which is the dumbest fucking thing in the world to come up to an election with. But that is a warning they should heed because it is going to come crumbling down on top of them. Women in this country are going to destroy the Republicans. And then when they do that, the Supreme Court needs to be careful because there's going to be the power and leverage to change their lives considerably.
Oh yeah, and it's not going to be pretty for Republicans. It's not going to be pretty for the Supreme Court. Um, I I really hope they do something. Now, if it comes out Joe Biden wins and Alito and Thomas both retire relatively quickly post-election, you know what? Then we don't need to expand the court. Leave it
No,
be. and just replace them and move on. As much as you could make the argument 13 circuits, 13 justices, the only reason I would support expanding the court is to get around these corrupt motherfuckers. The three that don't deserve to be there, and the other two that are just corrupt as hell.
Yeah.
So if those two retire, then I say leave the court at 9, replace them, move on, and you don't have to deal with the backlash down the road of Republicans trying to do the same thing. And next thing you know, we'd end up with every time the president switches, if he's got Congress, we've got more and more Supreme Court justices and nothing gets done.
Right. Well, I've said once Joe Biden wins in November, and assuming we get the power in the House and the Senate, first thing we need to do is codify Roe v. Wade. Second thing we need to do is straighten out the Supreme Court. And somebody else brought something up that I didn't think of, but they make a good point. We need to somehow get rid of Citizens International, that whole money thing with politics. I think, or Citizens United.
The Citizens United.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one basically where it said corporations are people. Right. And as such, they have the right to free speech. Money equals speech, so they can donate as much money as they want to PACs and etc. So their voice can be heard, which is a stupid argument.
It's not even a good argument. No.
But now that you look at it and you go, okay, well, it was rendered by a conservative sided Supreme Court, and Thomas was part of that court. I wonder if it wasn't, helping him financially to support that decision.
Oh, hell yeah.
Gee, I wonder. Well, it makes sense. And he's not the only one taking kickbacks on the entirety of the Supreme Court.
And you got to wonder if the Republicans aren't rethinking this a little bit when they're struggling for money and the Republicans are flush. It's kind of turned it around there. The money situation is pretty strong for the Democrats, and the Republicans are having a hell of a time. They probably don't like that Citizens United now.
Well, they would love it a lot more if they didn't have such shitty people being the face of their party.
Right.
If they didn't have Donald Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan, Jim Comer, those fucks. Yeah. If those people weren't the face right now of the Republican Party, Mike Johnson, if they had reasonable people, as unlikable as he was, Kevin McCarthy at least was somewhat presentable, somewhat reasonable. As the face of the Republican Party for Congress, he really wasn't bad. Even with, I hate to say it, even glitchy Mitch McConnell, yeah, as the face of the Republican Party, as shady as he was, you might not have liked his politics, but as a person, he didn't come off as ignorant, stupid, and just, yeah, anti-American. You just didn't like his politics.
Well, I think with Mitch McConnell, he's much like Joe Biden in that he's been around long enough. He knows how the game is played. We may not like the way he plays the game, but he understands it. Somebody like Mike Johnson, Jim Jordan, they don't get it all. They're just loud and obnoxious and demanding crazy shit. They aren't even in the game because they don't know how to play it.
Yeah. Like Mitch McConnell, one of the things, how many bills, us on the left, we would complain, well, Mitch was Senate Majority Leader. How many of those bills died on his desk? Well, they died on his desk because he knew if he brought them to the floor, even though they had the majority, he knew he didn't have the votes to stop it. He was just playing politics.
Right. Exactly.
He knew those bills were written bipartisan enough that they would get enough votes to pass or gain, or there was a risk that they could have at least passed. And he didn't want to take that chance. Whereas, look at Mike Johnson in the House right now. How many things he brought to the floor to pass that have failed repeatedly, where, a Mitch McConnell or a Nancy Pelosi would have brought those to a vote in their respective chambers
Exactly.
because there was the chance they'd fail.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Eric, we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. We're about that time right now. I want to thank you for coming in. It's always a great conversation when you come in. You bring a perspective that I don't have, and that's much appreciated by me, and I'm sure by the listeners as well. So thank you for coming by again today.
Well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed being on, and can't wait to be back.
And it was nice to see your dog here from time to time. Cecilia is her name, right?
Oh, yes, yes, it is Cecilia. She likes to make her presence known.
Well, she's always welcome. I love dogs better than people most times. So we're happy to have her on as well. Those of you listening to the Rational Boomer podcast, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.